Hey, welcome to the service tonight, and we're so excited about having the Christiansens with us, missionaries to Nigeria, and you've already enjoyed seeing their video this morning, but you'll see their video again, and excited about the call of God upon their lives to go to Nigeria. And so continue to pray about what God would have you give. For Faith Promise, we'll be collecting those cards next Sunday, your commitment cards, and so we're thankful for how God has provided for us and throughout this pandemic year, and we just look forward by faith taking these three families on, the Lanes, the Spillmans, and the Christiansens. We hope to take them on. We're planning on it, so we're hoping that you'll just continue to give. Those of you that have given in the past, if you would just turn in another commitment card, just to let us know you're going to continue, and just continue to give and pray for these missionary families, that God will continue to bring in their support, and that we'll be able to take them on, Lord willing, as our missionaries. And so get to know them. I appreciate Brother Mike having the question and answer time on Wednesday nights. If you haven't been able to see that, you should go back and watch that on our Wednesday night services, get to know the missionary a little bit better. And so enjoy the service tonight. Enjoy listening to Brother Christiansen preach tonight. And thank you for your faithfulness. God bless you, and have a great day.
This is Nigeria. This West African country, often referred to as the Giant of Africa, is the most populated country in Africa and the 7th most populated country in the world, with nearly 200 million people. There are about 250 unique people groups in Nigeria. Religiously, the country is split into the predominantly Muslim northern states and the mostly Christian southern states. According to most censuses, roughly half of Nigerians claim to be Christians. While this may sound encouraging, most who call themselves Christians are not born again, but are depending on their own works for salvation and not the finished work of Christ. Despite this spiritual poverty, to our knowledge, there are only 4 independent Baptist missionaries in the whole country. A country nearly 2/3 the American population has only 4 independent Baptist missionaries. That is 1 missionary for every 50 million Nigerians. This is Nigeria, a country where their greatest need is the gospel. The harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few.
We are Caleb and Emily Christiansen, and God has called us to spread the gospel in Nigeria, West Africa. We can't wait to begin serving in Nigeria, where we will work to win the lost, baptize and disciple believers, and train Nigerian men to start churches all across Nigeria. We will be going to the city of Abuja, the capital of Nigeria, right in the center of the country. And we will be working with missionary Mark Holmes, who has been serving in Nigeria for the last 14 years.
There are so many opportunities working with Pastor Holmes in Truth Baptist Church, but I'll let him tell you a little about that himself.
I'm very pleased to recommend to you Caleb and Emily Christiansen as missionaries in Nigeria. Since our family first came to the field in 2005, we've been praying for someone to come and join with us in the overwhelming task of training up men and ladies for the gospel ministry, of planting more churches throughout the country. Over 40 have already been started through our ministry, of reaching into neighborhoods and schools with Bible clubs to raise up the next generation of servants of God, and of discipling converts into dynamic and growing churches. I believe that God has especially equipped Caleb for the task of missions, as he's already had experience working with his parents in the Philippines, and he has served faithfully in our mission board for several years. I believe that Mrs. Emily is a hard-working and fully surrendered co-laborer with her husband. Both of them hit it off immediately with our church members and got along perfectly with our family. And we're looking forward to them coming out here and jumping right into our conferences, camps, Bible college, discipleship and outreach ministries in churches and local churches throughout the country. And we ask that you would prayerfully consider supporting them as missionaries in Nigeria.
Once we get to Nigeria, we will be able to get immediately involved in citywide soul winning. Bible clubs in the nearby villages, the wide open door of public school outreach, teaching in the Bible college, and personally going out with Bible college students to help them as they start churches all across Nigeria. We believe there is a great work awaiting us in Nigeria, and that God wants to accomplish much there. So please pray for us and consider supporting us and our ministry as we go to Nigeria, West Africa. Go ahead and open your Bibles with me to the book of John, and we're going to be in John chapter 4, is where we're going to be bringing the message from today. Now, for those of us who've been going to church for a while, it's not an unfamiliar passage. It's the story of Jesus and the woman at the well. And I'm not going to read the whole chapter for sake of time, but we have the story of Jesus. He's traveling with his disciples through Samaria, and they stop in this area, and the disciples go into town to get provisions. Jesus waits outside the well. And a woman comes at a time where it's not normal for people to be coming out and drawing water. She seems to be a bit of an outcast. And so she comes out to the well, and Jesus starts a conversation with her. And he is leading her to himself, showing her that he is the Messiah, he is the Christ, he is the promised one that they've been waiting for so long. And we're going to pick up here in verse number 25. Where Jesus is wrapping the whole conversation together and leading her to himself. Reading here, the woman saith unto him, talking about Jesus, I know the Messiah cometh, which is called Christ. When he is come, he will tell us all things. Jesus saith unto her, I that speak unto thee am he. And upon this came his disciples, and marveled that he talked with the woman. Yet no man said, What seekest thou, or why talkest thou with her? The woman then left her water pot, and went her way into the city, and saith to the men, Come, see a man which told me all things that ever I did. Is not this the Christ? Then they went out of the city, and came unto him. So when this lady realizes and believes in Jesus, she leaves everything she's doing, runs back into town, and runs around telling everyone, Hey, I found the Christ. I found the Messiah. The one that's been foretold to us, the one we've been waiting for, he's literally right outside of town. So, and people start hearing her, and they start dropping what they're doing, and they start running out of town to go meet this Jesus, this Christ that they've been told about. While all that is going on, while this woman is running around telling everyone that she's found the Messiah, that she's found Christ, Jesus is still outside the town, next to the well. And he starts having a conversation with his disciples. They came up in the middle of the conversation and began to wonder, why is he even talking with her? But they didn't want to interrupt him. So they're just kind of waiting. And then when she leaves, they're probably thinking, okay, well, that's one thing out of the way. We can go on with our day now. And picking up here in verse number 31, they have this conversation between Jesus and his disciples. In the meanwhile, his disciples prayed him, saying, Master, eat. But he said unto them, I have meat to eat that ye know not of. Therefore said the disciples one to another, Hath any man brought him aught to eat? Jesus saith unto them, My meat is to do the will of him that sent me, and to finish his work. Say not ye, There are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest. Behold, I say unto you, Lift up your eyes, and look on the fields, for they are white already to harvest. So Jesus is having this conversation with his disciples. They come up to him and saying, Master, eat. That's the reason why we went into town, to get food. Hey, let's eat. And Jesus starts talking to them and says, Jesus says, I have meat to eat that you know not of. And you see here something that you see pretty regularly throughout the scriptures with Jesus and his disciples. And if we're being honest, we see it in our own lives a lot. Where Jesus is talking to them about something spiritual, the disciples immediately start thinking about the physical, about what's immediately right here and now. And when he says, I had meat to eat that you know not of, the disciples, they start saying, Hey, did someone come out and bring him food while we were gone? Did someone else bring him provisions? Did someone else feed him when we were away? And Jesus says to them, he says, that's not what I'm talking about. My meat is to do the will of him that sent me. I get fulfilled
by doing the will of God. I am fulfilled by doing what my Father put me on this earth to do. And then he almost seems to make a jump here. He starts talking about the will of God, about the will of the Father, and how he's fulfilled, how he's fed by doing what his Father has called him to do. And then he starts talking about harvest and wheat fields and things like that. And it almost seems like a jump. But we'll make the connection here, where he says, there are yet 4, say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest. Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, for they are white already to harvest. And as these disciples and as Jesus were walking through this rural area, I'm sure they had lots of wheat fields around, and they could see these physical wheat fields that were around them, that it wasn't quite time for harvest yet. I grew up surrounded by corn and soybean. And that was where I grew up. It was just flat land, farmland, for miles around my hometown. You go out of town, you're seeing corn, you're seeing soybean, that's it. And as you grow up around areas like that, you see that you get to know their growth cycle pretty well. And growing up, I just kind of knew if corn was growing well, or if it was kind of if it was kind of stunted in its growth. You could tell when you could tell. And if you look at it, oh, it's not quite ready yet. And so they think at this time that as they're traveling through this rural area, that it is about 4 months till the harvest time comes. It's about 4 months until they come, and they knew that. But Jesus is saying, don't look on these physical wheat fields that you see around you and say, oh, it's not time to work yet. It's not time for that. It's still 4 months till the harvest time comes. He says, lift up your eyes and look on the fields. And I honestly believe that as he's saying, lift up your eyes, these Samaritans are starting to come out of the village. These Samaritan people are starting to come out of town to find the Messiah that this woman has told them about. And he tells them, lift up your eyes. Look on the fields. Look on these people, this spiritual harvest that I'm telling you about. He says, look, for they are white, all ready to harvest. Now, something you notice that with a wheat field that these disciples that he would have been referencing here, when it's harvest time, you notice that it's kind of like a golden color. And even our own patriotic songs talk about, our amber waves of grain. And so, but why is he talking about a field being white, a white wheat field? What's that about? Because when you leave a wheat field in the field and it starts growing and there's maturity and it gets that nice golden color, if you leave it in the field and you don't harvest it, there's kind of this mold or this fungus that starts growing over the top of it that kind of turns it a whitish color. And at that point, when you see a white wheat field, if you harvest it, it's still going to be good. It's not ruined yet, but you better get moving quick. You know that it's past ripe, and you better get in there. You better get moving, or else the whole field is going to rot, or else the whole field is going to go bad. And Jesus is telling them, look on the fields, look on these people. We better get working now, or else the harvest is going to rot. The field is going to go to waste, and then whatever labor we put into it would have been for nothing. He says, look on the fields, look at these people. And I believe there are 3 things here that we're going to look at today. The disciples saw when these Samaritans were coming out at them, when these Samaritans were coming to them to see them. 3 things that I believe will be a challenge and a help to us today. Now, first off, when the disciples saw these Samaritans coming out, they saw people that were very different from them. They were very different from them. Because they had a different culture, they had a different language, they lived next to each other, but they did not like each other at all. It was not a good situation. They had different skin color, they had different language, different culture, different customs. All these things were so different. If you look back in the Old Testament, when you have King Saul, then King David, then King Solomon, and King Solomon's son, he made some pretty foolish choices and split the kingdom of Israel into 2. And you had the northern 10 tribes, and then you had the tribe of Judah in the south with Jerusalem. And then the books of First and Second Kings go through all that story, and you'll find that the 10 northern tribes, eventually they were taken away captive by the Assyrians. They were taken away captive. They were taken back to the Assyrian homeland. But there were people that they left behind, and then those people that they left behind started intermarrying with the Assyrians that occupied the land, and that's where the Samaritans came from. And so the Jews looked on them as half-breeds, as literally not as good as the Jews, because they were only part Jew, and they had intermarried with these Assyrians, and they weren't full-blooded Jew. And so, but later on you find that Judah itself was taken captive by Babylon, and they were taken away captive for so many years, and then they were allowed to return. And then as they came back to Jerusalem and they started rebuilding the city, rebuilding the temple, these Samaritans, who as a whole they were never able to come back, but these Samaritan people, these half-breeds as the Jews saw them, they came to them and said, hey, we want to help you rebuild. We want to help you. We are your brothers. We are your kindred. We have to share the same history. We are going to help you with this. And the Jews told them in no uncertain terms, no, we don't want your help. We don't want you. We're not brethren. We're not kindred. Get away from us. We don't need you. We don't want you. And from that time, they had pretty rough relations. And this is literally hundreds of years later that they've had this bad blood going on. The Jews were taught from when they were little to avoid Samaritans. Many Jews were that if they had the shadow of a Samaritan pass over them, they would immediately go home and take a bath, because they would just need to cleanse themselves, because I can't believe I let a Samaritan get that close to me, that his shadow could touch me. And they did not like each other at all. And in fact, when Jesus was having his talk with this Samaritan woman, she tells him, why are you a Jew asking me for water? You don't have any dealings with the Samaritans. And then later on she says, you Jews, you worship in the temple. We worship on the mountains. Saying we do things different. We are not the same. And that's something that Emily and I feel like we got a pretty good feel for, like what these Samaritans were getting when we went on our survey trip to Nigeria. It was about a year and a half ago. We were able to go over there for 3 weeks. And it was astounding the differences that we found there. It was about a 24-hour trip overall, traveling from Chicago, had a layover in Istanbul, Turkey, and then went down to Abuja, Nigeria. And then we were in the capital city, the international airport in the capital city of Nigeria. We get off the airplane. It's about midnight, 90 degrees Fahrenheit. It's very hot. There's no air conditioning whatsoever. We look at the lights, and the lights are all kind of dim and flickering. You know how kind of when a light bulb is about to turn, about to burn out, and it kind of flickers a little bit? That's what all these lights were doing. Not because they were all about to burn out, but because there wasn't strong enough electric current to keep them running the way they were supposed to go. And so that was our baptism into Nigeria. We went to the missionary's family where we were staying with. It was dark. It was night, so we didn't see a whole lot at that time. But the next day, we were immediately immersed in everything that was different. Now, first of all, we, except for the missionary family we were with, me and my wife were the only white people around, period. Like they have a term for white folk over there. They call them Oyibo. And so it was nothing at all. You go walking down the street, you're driving in your car down the road, and you hear, hey, Oyibo, Oyibo, hey. And they'll just wave at you because it's not a common sight. You stand out like a sore thumb. And there is no hiding the fact. And so we got attention wherever we went to, which was a little different for us because we like to fly under the radar and just get in, serve where we can without any fanfare. But everywhere we went, we got attention. It happened several times. We're driving down the road and we get stopped by traffic or stopped by a traffic light or something. And then all of a sudden a motorcyclist drives up right next to you and he looks at you and says, hey, Oyibo, hey. And then he'll take his cell phone out and take a picture because he just wanted a picture with the Oyibo. And then he'll just drive off because that's all he wanted, a picture with the Oyibo. And one time we went in a village just outside the capital city called Azunu, and we went out there, and there was a member of the church that we were visiting that lived out there, and so we went there, visited with him for a while, and then we started traveling, going around, and started witnessing to his neighbors and going different areas in the little village there. And when we first arrived there, we saw there was this group of children, and my wife and I, we've grown up working in bus routes and Sunday school, and so we love working with kids. And so we thought maybe, we'll get to see them in a little bit. But after a while, the kids are nowhere to be found. They were outside playing when we arrived in the village, and so we're looking, and we can't find them. And then eventually we see them all huddling underneath a mango tree. And I thought, maybe they're just getting there underneath the shade, because we went right in the middle of the hot season. It was an absolute brilliant decision. Not really. But it was about 115 degrees during the day, 90 degrees at night, with about 80-90% humidity. And so it was very, very hot during the day. So I thought these kids are going, and they're getting shade underneath a mango tree. And then as we're walking by, our interpreter who's with us, he just starts laughing. And I ask him, David, what's so funny? And because he could hear the children talking. And he looks at me and says, the children, they are scared of you. And I look at Emily and I say, why are they scared of us? We're not very tall people. I'm 5'3", my wife is 5'2". Or like, why are they scared of us? And he looks at me and says, they've never seen Oyibo before. They think you two are ghosts. And so they were hiding under the tree because they'd never seen people with white skin before. So they thought we were ghosts, and so they were hiding from us. And it was just completely different. The traffic was mayhem, driving from any place to any place. There are traffic laws there, but they're more like suggestions. And you're driving down roads that seem more fit for dirt biking than for actual driving. And so you're driving down these roads that aren't very well maintained. It's hot. There's hundreds of languages being spoken around you. Fortunately, English is the official language, so you'll find a lot of people who do speak English. But even the English that they're speaking is not quite the same as what you're used to. Because even when you can hear that it's English, it's often like what's called a pidgin English or a broken English. And it's like for example, if you want to ask someone, oh, how are you? Like, how are you doing? Like, they would ask, how you day? How you day? And then if you want to say, oh, I'm good, I'm having a good day, you would say, I define, I defino. Let's put an O on there for extra emphasis. And so you can kind of tell that it's kind of like English, but it's not exactly the same. So as you're traveling around, you're hearing these different languages, hearing all these different, the English that's not quite English, and the food is different, the greetings are different, and people were generally very excited to see us, very happy to see us. Excuse me. But they have a customs with greetings, which took us a little while to get used to. When they greet you and they say hello, they'll ask you, oh, how are you? How was your day? How is the night? Meaning, how did you sleep? How is the sun? Like, how are you handling the heat? How was your travels? How was your journey? And they'll ask you all this series of questions before they even get to what you're there to talk about. And so it takes you like sometimes 5-10 minutes just to get to what you were there to talk about. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just took quite some time to get used to, because I'm used to, hey, how are you doing? Good. I'm doing good too. Thank you. And then you get down to business. But there they have the whole system where you go through all these questions. And especially if they know you. The missionary family that we were with, they have 6 kids. And so if someone knew them, they would go through each of the 6 children and ask questions about each of his children to show how much he cared. And so it was like, oh, how are you, Pastor? How was the day? How was your night? How was the journey? How was the travels? And then they'll go through, oh, and how is your wife? Oh, and how is Joseph? And how is Victoria? And how is Brian? And how is Noah? And how is LaDonna? And how is Aaron? And they'll go through each of these children. And so he'll be sitting there talking forever before they even get to what they're there to talk about. And just every single day, just baptized in the things that were different. Every single day was an experience. Every single day we were there for 3 weeks. Every single day of that 3 weeks, we were just faced with the fact we're not in Kansas anymore. It's entirely different. It's entirely foreign and strange and just different. But as we were there, and the longer we spent there, we started to notice something that I believe the disciples saw as well. That as these Samaritans came and they started talking to Jesus, and they were so different. They looked different, they talked different, they acted different, they just did things different. But then they started to notice that even with all the differences, they were still the same. And as these Samaritans go up to Jesus and they start seeing the questions that these Samaritans are asking Jesus, and those are the same questions that they were asking Jesus. And they start seeing, it doesn't say specifically that he healed people here, but possibly people started bringing people out for Jesus to heal, just like they'd seen back in their hometown. And as they saw that, as they were talking with Jesus, asking the same questions with the same burdens and the same hurts, and they saw Jesus talking with them and saw the love that Jesus had for these people, just like he had seen the love that he had shown for them. And they see that these people, that although they're so different, they're pretty much exactly the same. They see these people that they seem so different. These people they've been taught their whole lives to avoid, to shun, to reject. And then they start seeing that they're pretty much exactly the same as them. And that's what we saw when we were in Nigeria. That on the surface, everything seems so different. But then as you start talking with the people, as you start seeing the situations, you realize they're pretty much exactly the same. In the eyes of God, they're the same. Same needs, same hurts. Have people who, one time we went and visited a home that it was just a tiny little home. It was their whole house was smaller than most people's bedrooms. And there were 4 people living in that house there. It was just a tiny little thing. And I started talking with them, and it was just, they were struggling with the same things I've seen so many times as I've ministered in the U.S. They're saved, but they're struggling with making church a priority, struggling with making ends meet and finding the time to make sure that they go to church because they know it's important, but they're struggling to be able to make it into church. And it's just saw the same things over and over again, because in the eyes of God, these people were exactly the same. And they were the same because of the third thing they saw was that their biggest need was Jesus. Because these people, they seemed so different. But then as they start talking with Jesus, they see that they're the same because of their need for the Lord. And in Nigeria, you'll see Nigeria is one of those countries that stymies the professionals because they have the largest economy in Africa. They're a major oil exporter. They have tons of money flowing around, but they can never quite seem to get their act together on the world stage perspective there, because they have I read an article not long ago saying that Nigeria has the potential to become Africa's first superpower. Like America's a superpower, kind of like Russia used to be a superpower, to have major influence on the world stage, but they just can't quite seem to get it together. And people have all kinds of theories about what will help Nigeria. They say, oh, they need better education, even though they have the highest percentage of literacy in any African nation. They're like, oh, they need better technology. But Nigerians, they find a way to get their technology. Their smartphones, you'll see them around. We saw it several times where you'll have this little mud hut, a thatched roof with grass for the roof, and you see right next to it there's a post with a satellite dish right on there, because you need to make sure they get their TV because that's important. And so but people talk about maybe they need this, they need that, they need better infrastructure, they need a middle class, they need all these things. But ultimately, the thing that Nigeria and Nigerians need is the exact same thing that we need. And that's the Lord Jesus Christ. And that is they need the Lord, just like we did. Every single person who's watching this video with me, who's a believer in Jesus Christ, is a believer because someone, sometime, brought the gospel to you. Whether it was like me at a junior church service where I heard the gospel every single week, or whether it was a neighbor coming and knocking on your door, whether it was a family member, whether you grew up in church, or however the circumstance happened. You accepted Jesus Christ as your Savior because someone took the effort, took the time, spent the money, went through the inconvenience to bring the gospel to you. However that happened, they brought the gospel to you. And because of that, you were able to believe in Jesus Christ and have your ultimate need met. And it's the same exact thing for these Nigerians, for everyone. I'm glad that the disciples got this message. I'm glad that the disciples, after Jesus died on the cross and rose again from the grave and Pentecost happened, the church was founded and the church started spreading, that they didn't just keep it to themselves, didn't just keep it to the Jews, but they got this message to bring it not only to the Jews, to the Samaritans, but to everyone else. And because of that, I'm saved today. Because of that, I have the gospel. And because of that, I'm able to give the gospel to others. Their ultimate need is Jesus Christ. Now, it doesn't take very long, you'll notice, when you go outside those church doors, to find someone that's pretty different from you. Because you go out in this world today and it seems like it's getting crazier and crazier. And you find someone and you look at them and think, man, how could you think like that? How could you be such void of common sense to believe the things that you believe? And you find these differences, and especially those of us who have grown up in church. And that's an amazing thing about the Bible, how it literally changes us from the inside out. We can become saved as one person, and the Lord literally changes us into someone new. And we are transformed from one thing into another. But if we're not careful, what we can let that do is allow it to make a divide between us and the world. And there should be separation there, don't get me wrong. But we let it say, oh, well, that person is too different. That person over there, like, I'm not even sure they would want to hear the gospel if I gave it to them, just by basing on their looks alone. And we see people like, oh, well, they believe this way, or they believe that way, or they have that bumper sticker. So there's no way that they would want to hear the gospel. There's no way that they would want to be saved. There's no way. So why would I even try? Because they're just too different. But we can't let that become our mindset. Just like these disciples, they saw these people, they were different. They look so different, they act so different. But in the end, in the eyes of God, they're exactly the same, have the same exact need that you did and that I did. That need for Jesus Christ. And just like someone gave the gospel to us, they need someone to overcome the inconvenience, to overcome the awkwardness, to overcome the fear, to be able to go to them and give them the gospel. Even if you say, I'm not sure if I could do that. I'm not sure if I would know what to say, or I'm not sure if I would know how to explain it all to them. Even just saying, hey, here's a tract from my church. I know it's Corona and everyone's super like, oh, stay 6 feet back. But if we really want to give the gospel to people, there's ways around the 6 foot rule. There's ways that we can act, that we can do to make sure that people get the gospel. Even if it's just, hey, here's something with some information from my church on there. It's got some Bible verses on there that I think will help you out if you just take time to read it. And there's a phone number on there if you have any questions. That would be enough for somebody. That would be the first step for somebody. That would be someone having light shined in the darkness for somebody. And it is possible that something as simple as that could make the difference for somebody. don't let the differences that we can see be the thing that stops us from getting the gospel to somebody. Because you'll see people that are different. You'll find people that seem so different. We can use different terms for it. Weird, strange, foreign, different. But you peel all those things back, and you see in the eyes of God they're exactly the same, have the exact same issues and needs that we do, that we did when we needed Jesus, because that's their ultimate need, is Jesus Christ. And we are going to be going over to Nigeria to give the gospel to people, to many who have never heard of it, who have heard the name Jesus, but don't know how he can save them. And so I'm glad that while we're doing that in Nigeria, that there's a church right where you are there in Banning that will be giving the gospel out to people, that sees the importance, even in the midst of a lockdown, even in the midst of all the COVID craziness that's going on, to have a virtual missions conference, to get it in its importance, to give the gospel around the world and around the corner and around where you are. Yeah, you can look around your neighborhood. You can look around your area, your city. You don't have to go very far to find people that are different. But just bear in mind that in the end, they're just the same. And they need Jesus. Am I going to be the one to make sure that they hear about Jesus? Am I going to be the one? Am I going to let the differences stop me? Or am I going to be the one to say, you know what? Despite the differences, despite the challenges, I'm going to be the one that's going to help them see Jesus.